Members of the Move as One coalition went on a walking tour of EDSA today to show what else needs to be fixed along this major thoroughfare. And joining us via Zoom is Dr. Robert Siy Jr., co-convenor of Move as One coalition. Good evening and welcome to the big story. Tell us, how was the walk?
You know, Ses, first, thanks so much for inviting me to this show. Uh, it was hot, it was difficult, it was dangerous. Uh, I would say, first of all, I really want to give my hats off to Secretary Vince Dizon for joining us on this walkthrough of EDSA. You don't see secretaries actually coming out and experiencing
All right.
this type of this type of walk.
What
And
needs to be done? What did you
well,
discover?
you know, uh, in almost every corner the walk was treacherous. It's either you see potholes, you see cracks, you see areas where you know the the sidewalk disappears, forcing the pedestrian to actually step into the carriageway. And so this is so dangerous, especially when you have not just a single file, but people moving in two directions on the sidewalk. So this is, in a way, it's really shameful that we have the most important corridor in the country where we have, the most commercial activity, where we have perhaps the most densely populated residential areas, and you have a road that is unwalkable. So this really makes us what I would call car dependent. We are forcing Filipinos to go out and buy a motor vehicle and add to the traffic, the noise, the pollution, simply because we cannot provide an alternative like a good pedestrian walkway.
But now that EDSA is being rebuilt, it's not called a rehab anymore, but a rebuilding. And they're saying they want to build it more like a boulevard as opposed to a highway, which means more pedestrian-friendly spaces, still maintaining the bus lane as a priority for commuters. Are you happy, Sir Robert, with these
You know,
proposed changes?
that would be a dream come true. This is really what would change the character of Metro Manila and make it a more livable city. So can you imagine if, instead of having this decrepit, pedestrian infrastructure, which is not even accessible for any person with disability, if we had instead a wide, safe walkway with shade, with greenery, under trees, it would actually make EDSA, so green and also so inviting.
But are you
We would,
confident, Robert, that they can achieve this?
well, the real test is whether both MMDA and DPWH buy into the vision that Secretary Vince Dizon has put out for all of us. See, what Sec Vince has been talking about is this EDSA rehabilitation is like a once in a lifetime opportunity to actually redesign EDSA to make it people oriented instead of car oriented. You see, when Secretary Bonoan was describing what would happen, he said, "Oh, it will give everyone such a smooth ride." But again, his client is the motorist. His client is the person in a four-wheeled motor vehicle. But we know people who own cars are actually in a small minority. In Metro Manila, it's only about 11.5% of Filipino households in Metro Manila that own cars. The vast majority are actually people who use public transport, who walk, and who cycle.
Well, Dr. Robert, will you also be doing a walking tour at night? I understand you did one in the morning, but in the evening, that's when rush hour happens, when a
Mas
lot of people...
treacherous yan.
Opo.
Kasama
You
ng
know,
human na ano,
yeah,
mga
you know,
pickpocket or mga criminals.
Exposure to crime, yeah.
that would be terrific. And maybe if I can invite the three of you to join us. Actually,
Oh,
this
game,
morning,
game,
we
game.
had,
We're
okay,
committing.
yeah,
We'll do the show
we,
from there.
we had, several people from media with us. And that it was so important for us because it helps to get the message out about what we need to change. And like you said, so many people are actually on EDSA during the night. You know, how I got to the starting point, I took the EDSA busway at 4 in the morning. And to my surprise, because I'm actually very interested in improving bus services, at 4 a.m., the
Dami ng
bus
tao.
was standing room. The bus on the EDSA busway was already standing room. And that for me was a big surprise to see that many people already on EDSA that early in the morning. We need to actually make EDSA 24/7 safe,
Yeah.
bright, clean, comfortable, convenient.
But Dr. Robert, though, there is a JICA study. This is even old data that we lose, like what, 1.3, 1.4 billion pesos a day due to traffic. So in the meantime, before that dream is realized of a better EDSA, what happens then in the 2 years? We have NCAP, we have odd even on EDSA pending. And I just wanted to get your thoughts of what would happen in the meantime and how the economy could withstand that crazy traffic that we're imagining.
You know, I think we all realize we need to look at low-hanging fruit and quick wins. And today, most of our investments in public transport are actually going into very large railway projects. Railways are still important, but they won't happen fast. We need to actually focus on road-based public transport. So these are buses, jeepneys, also even tricycles. We also need to look at what we call active transport. So this is walking and cycling and enabling people to actually walk and cycle instead of using a private motor vehicle.
Yeah. It's the
Most
best
of our
way,
trips,
most
yes,
environment-friendly way.
exactly. And most of our trips are actually short distances, 3 kilometers or less. It is very much walkable or bikeable. But we need to create the safe spaces on our roads to enable people to go out. So it means having protection. It's not just paint. You need to actually have a barrier. Uh, in the case of also sidewalks or bike lanes, to the extent that we can create shade, that would
Yes.
be that would make it so much more comfortable. And when we talk about climate change and actually fighting what we call the urban heat island effect, we need to actually create more shaded areas on our roads. So instead of cutting down trees, we need to actually go back to planting trees on our roads, on our sidewalks, make them shaded.
But Dr. Robert, well, what do you make of that timeline? Just 2 years to rebuild EDSA. And what should we be doing in the meantime? Kasi yung suggestion ng iba, tiisin na lang. But the criticism there also is they didn't give motorists enough time to plan for these changes, such as the number or the odd-even coding scheme.
Okay, on the odd even scheme, um, as a transport planner, for me, it's a self-defeating approach because we know when you introduce something like that, number coding, people who can afford will go out and buy a second vehicle or a third vehicle. And once you have that vehicle, you will use it. And that will add more cars, more motorcycles on our roads. So this is a self-defeating approach. we need to look at other options. So basically, what can we do in the next 2 years? First, for public transport, wherever possible, we need to look at how we can put public transport on a dedicated lane so our jeepneys and buses are not stuck in traffic. You know, I came back from a trip to Italy just recently, and my observation of a city like Milan, they have a dedicated lane for buses, but at the same time, they allow taxis and Uber to also use that dedicated lane. So you have a lane for buses, but it is not empty most of the time. You have other public transport vehicles able to use it. And we could apply that on many roads. Then, creating sidewalks and bike lanes. That is not rocket science. You can build those in 12 months or less. So if we put our minds to it, even on EDSA, as part of the EDSA rehab, what I would really want to see or hope to see is one car lane width that is devoted to a sidewalk that is in a way
Wow, that's wide.
grade separated. One, look, in most major cities, the
That's true.
main avenue, the main thoroughfare has a wide sidewalk.
Yeah.
We need something like that in order to attract one car lane wide. You can also put the bicycles there,
Yes.
and it will be a safe space for bicycles. And then the next priority would be the dedicated lane for the EDSA busway. We need to preserve that. And in order to raise capacity of the EDSA busway, at stations, you need what is called a passing lane. You need to enable some express buses to be able to overtake those that are loading and unloading at
So
station.
a wider busway.
Wider, a wider path for the buses around each station. And then the residual is what you would leave for private motor vehicles. And once we do that, once we prioritize what we call the efficient, sustainable, and inclusive transportation modes, then we will be encouraging people to shift away from using a motorcycle or a car, and instead they will adopt walking, cycling, or public transport in order to get to their destinations. And that is really the lasting, the durable solution to our pollution, traffic, and heat issues that we suffer today.
Okay. Any more questions?
I think.
All right. Well, did you give this all to the good Secretary Vince Dizon? Is he going to implement all of that?
We've given as much as we can, but the good thing is, Secretary Vince, he's very much engaged with civil society, and this is really what we appreciate.
Okay.
He talks to us, he listens to us, he asks us questions, and we're there to support him in this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and see you in our EDSA by night journey.
Okay,
That
Yes,
was Dr.
we're going
Robert
to-
Siy Jr.,
we'll take you up on that.
co-convener of Move as One Coalition.